Welcome. We're going to be talking about diatonic 7th chords in inversions as well as in root position, and some examples on how to part right. In our previous talk, we gave all the rules and policies and guidelines on how to do that. So here we're going to try to apply it and be as successful as possible. Let's look at our first example. Right here, we're just asking to make sure that you have the spelling, so you can do the spellings quickly. A flat major is our key, a 1 major 7. Take special note on how you indicate the proper Roman numeral analysis. In these examples, we're asking you to do that without a key signature, so just putting in accidentals. So, 1 in the key of A flat major is an A flat chord. So, A flat is our first note, and then we're just going up in the key. So in the key of A flat major, we have C naturals, we have E flat, and we have a G. These are just, again, the notes that are in the key. In a major key, you never need to add accidentals of any kind. In a minor key, for some chords, you will need to, when you need to raise that leading tone. So there's an example of the 1 major 7 chord spelled correctly. We go here, now we're in G minor. We're asking for the sharp 6, half diminished 7. So, step-by-step process. In G, the 6, G, A, B, C, D, E, E is our letter. So we can write that in without any other thought whatsoever. The key signature of G minor has 2 flats, a B flat and an E flat. So normally, this would be an E flat, but sharp 6 means that we are raising that 6th scale degree a half step. Normally it would be an E flat, so that sharp doesn't mean we put a sharp next to the E, it means we raise it a half step. So the E flat becomes an E natural, so we actually write a natural sign. So that's an important thing to remember. When the Roman numeral is indicating a sharp or a flat, what it really is saying is go up a half step or go down a half step. So in this case, a flat has to then turn into a natural. We then continue and stack all the other notes. G, we already said that there's a B flat in our key signature of G minor, and then finally a D. So that E natural, G, B flat, D is our sharp 6, half diminished 7 in the key of G minor. Let's keep going. And we have something that we haven't used a lot here. This is the movable C clef, and it is indicating that third line is middle C. When it's in this position, it's called the alto clef. This is not used as frequently today as it was in the Baroque era. In part, the reason for that is the technology of music printing. When music printing was movable blocks that you would then roll out and use like as a early printing press, you didn't want to have lots of ledger lines. You wanted to use clefs to help read music. And it also was the way that you would learn how to transpose, by using these different clefs. Less common today, but it is important for us to still know about it. So alto clef, which is what we're doing, says that this is C, then you just B is that space, A, G, then we have going up D, E, F, G. So that's just a reminder. Again, that is middle C, third line is middle C, and you then go from there. We're asking for a 6 chord in 6/5 inversion. That's first inversion. So first we'll start with, well, what is the root? In G, G, A, B, C, D, E. E is our 6th scale degree. So we know we need an E. I'm going to write that here. And if we just stack the chord E, G, B, D, those are the notes that I know I need. 6/5 tells us that the third of the chord is in the bass, or the lowest note in this case. So I'm going to start by writing a G. That is a G in alto clef. I then stack B, D, E. and I have my 6/6/5 chord. Our next example, F minor, a 3 major 6/5. I'd like to point out again that when we're talking about seventh chords, when they are an inversion, you don't see the number 7. And sometimes this gets confusing. People think, oh, it's a seventh chord. I need the number 7 in my Roman numeral analysis. That's incorrect. 6/5 means it's a seventh chord. 4/3 means it's a seventh chord. 4/2 means it's a seventh chord. 7 means it's a seventh chord. So be careful with that. Don't get confused. So 3 major 6/5. In this case, F, G, A. In the key of F minor, we have 4 flats. A flat is one of them, so we know A flat is the root of our chord, of our 3 chord. We then stack thirds. C, E flat is another one of the flats in that key signature, and then G. And we'll notice that that makes an A flat major 7 chord, which is exactly why we have an uppercase Roman numeral 3, meaning that it's a major triad. And then the capital M indicates that there's a major 7 in the chord. So, again, the Roman numeral will tell you whether it's an uppercase Roman numeral will mean that there's a major third involved. A lowercase Roman numeral will mean there's a minor third in the chord. And then this capital M helps tell you that the 7th is actually a major 7th as opposed to a minor 7th or diminished 7th. So as we write it, we need to have 6/5, which means the C is our lowest note, then our E flat, G, A flat. You'll notice that there's a specific pattern. When we're talking about a 6/5 chord, you'll have stacked thirds and then a second at the top when you're doing something in a closed position like we're doing here. There's always going to be these patterns. 4/3 will have a different pattern, 4/2 will have a different pattern. So just be aware of that. That'll help speed things along when you're trying to work things out. Our last example on this top line, B minor, a 1/7 chord, which means we need B, D, there's an F sharp in our key, and then we need an A. Now, A is the 7th scale degree, often called the leading tone. So if we raise the leading tone, making the A and A sharp, it becomes the leading tone. It's almost a little bit inaccurate when you say raise the leading tone. It's more raise it to become the leading tone. If we don't raise it, it's still scale degree 7, but it's called subtonic. So in this case, A equals scale degree 7. If we don't do anything to it, it's called subtonic. If we raise it, it's called the leading tone. In this example, we know we have a minor triad. Because it's just 7 and there's no capital M, we know that it's asking for the subtonic, the minor 7, the subtonic scale degree. So B, D, F sharp, A is exactly our note. Let's give ourselves a clef here. Let's make it treble clef. B, D, F sharp, A. So one thing you can practice is just spelling the chords as quickly as possible in all the different keys, all different inversions, to help get your mental processing power so that you can do those quickly. Then, when we get to something like this, here we're kind of going the other way around. First up here, we gave you the Roman numeral and asked you to tell us the notes. Here, I'm giving you the notes and asking you for the Roman numeral. So, how quickly can you look at these pitches, figure out what the root is, what the Roman numeral is, the appropriate inversion, and write it out? So here we go. I've got B, D sharp, E, G sharp. Those are my pitches. B, D sharp, E, and G sharp. So the challenge, step 1 really, is after identifying the pitches, is to say, well, which one of these pitches is the root of the chord? The root of the chord is the note where you can stack all the other notes up in third. So B, D is a third, promising. If I were to go up another third, the letter would be F, but there is no F. So I know B cannot be the root. We already said D, the next one up for D would be an F. Can't do it. E up a third, G, B, D. There's our answer. We couldn't do it here with the G because it would be G, B, D, F. So we identified that E is the root of that chord. E is what in the key of E? 1. It's major. So we write uppercase Roman numeral. So E, G sharp, B, D sharp is a major triad with a major 7. So that means we need the uppercase Roman numeral because it's a major triad. We then have the capital M and 7 to indicate that major 7th. Because this is a, actually I'm sorry. We have the capital M to indicate that we have a major 7, but we're not in root position. If we were in root position, I could write that 7. We're not though. Our B, which is, if this is, the E is the root, the G is the third, the B is the 5th, and then the D is the 7th. So with that, we know that this is second inversion, and second inversion is always indicated as 4-3. So that's how we would do that. Let me explain that just a little bit better, or a little clearer, or with more steps. First off, where do we get the 4-3 from? This is figured bass, which means intervals above the bass note. The bass note is B. That means that there is a third above the bass, which is right here. It doesn't tell you whether it's a major third or a minor third. It's only saying a diatonic third above the bass. It also says that there's a fourth above the bass. So again, B is the bass, E is the fourth. It doesn't tell us about this other note, B to G sharp. And again, it doesn't matter sharp or flat. It's for figured bass, you're just talking about the number. But B to G would be a 6. So there's an invisible 6 right here. And one of the things that we've covered before is that 4-3, the full is 6-4-3, but the 6 is left out as a means of shorthand so that you don't need to write it. It's assumed. So you always assume the 6. Let's move on to the next one, and we'll talk again step by step on how we figure out how to identify this. So we start by step 1, identify the pitches. And I always go bottom to top. That's how harmony is built. So I have a D, I have a C, an F, and an A. Those are the letters. Which one of these is my root? Which one can I stack thirds on? The answer is the D. So, step 1, what are the pitches? Step 2, which one's the root? So we identify it as the root. Then, what is that in the key? In the key of A minor, A, B, C, D. D is the 4. Okay? So we know it's a 4 chord. We can determine our sonority a couple different ways. D, F, A is a minor triad. D to C is a minor 7. So it's a minor triad with a minor 7. So root, 3rd, 5th, 7th. We know that minor triads are indicated with a lowercase Roman numeral, so I put the lowercase Roman numeral 4. In this case, it's a root position, and root position has the figured bass of simply 7. Implied and invisible is 5-3. So 7-5-3 would be the complete figured bass. We use the shorthand of just 7. Let's move to our next example. First we get the pitches. F sharp, B, D, A. Now we need to find the root. The root is B. It's the only one we can stack thirds. So root, 3rd, fifth is in the bass, seventh is in the soprano. So, what is B in the key of G major? G, A, B, it's the 3 chord. It's minor, and second inversion means 4-3. Just like we had here, 4-3 inversion. Our next example, E flat major. E flat major. We have A flat, E flat, G, C. The root is A flat, so it's in root position. A flat is 4 in the key of E flat, so it is a uppercase Roman numeral 4, capital M, 7. Hopefully you want to get to the point where you can do it that quickly, where you identify the pitches and you don't need to, count on your fingers to figure out that lines and spaces. You look at the pitches that you have and you can see just because you've done it so many times, which one is going to be the root of that collection of pitches. Our last example on this line, we're in the key of F minor. The pitches are A flat, C, F, and E flat. Which one is the root? A flat, C, E flat, G, nope. C, E, G, nope. It's going to be this F. This is our root. This is our third, that's our fifth, and that's our seventh. So, F in the key of F is a 1 chord. It's lowercase because it is minor in sonority, minor, minor 7. We then have the A flat as our bass note, which means first inversion, third, so 6-5 is the appropriate figured bass. Now, we're moving forward. We have something a little bit more complex. Now, I'm giving you what key I want you to do, the 7th chord, and I'm asking you to put a chord in front that would lead into this chord and a chord afterwards that would make sense for it to resolve to. I have a little P here, and what that means is that I want the 7th of this 3 chord to be prepared as a passing tone, or set up as a passing tone, so prepared and resolved as if it were a passing tone. So, step 1, let's get our Roman numerals and decide what comes before a 3 chord. What can go to 3 in a traditional harmonic progression? The most common chord before 3 is 1. Where can 3 go? Where does it commonly go? It can go to 6 or 4. So I'm going to choose 4. 6 is perfectly acceptable. Now that I've chosen my Roman numerals, I'm going to write my bass line. I'm going to write F, A, and I didn't put a key signature here, so I'm going to add it now. Key of F major has 1 flat, it is a B flat, and then I have the B flat. Here's the root of my 4 chord. That's what I do first. First, let me write this down so that you kind of have a checklist. It's always good to have a checklist. Step 1, step 2, step 3. So step 1, determine your Roman numerals. So decide what comes before and what comes after. Then write out your bass part. And then 3, we now need to figure out where our 7th is going to go. The 7th of our chord, we have A, so A, C, E, G. It's a G. And for ease, I'm going to make this my alto. I'm going to put the G right here. And since it's passing tone, I know I need to go A, G, F. So that this 7th looks as if it were a passing tone. So this G looks as if it was a passing tone. That's what that means. Why did I choose the alto? Well, I just looked at spacing. I have a pretty high bass. That means I'm going to have a pretty high tenor. And if I made this my soprano, everything's going to be really squunched together. And I want to make my life easy, not hard. So then you write the voice with the seventh in it. So whatever voice that is, you choose it. Alto voice is what I chose in this example. So I got to complete my one chord. One chord is going to be F, F, A, C. So I got one F, I got an A. So F, F, A, C. I got one F, I got one A. Spacing, I'm going to put my C here, so I got a nice spacing. And I need another F. I'll put my F's up here for the soprano. So that's how I determine my initial voicing. After this, things should get pretty easy, less decisions. I look for common tones. I say, what do I need for my three chord? I need A, C, E, G. I have the A, I have the G, I need a C, I need an E. Well, C common tone, right here. Common tones are my friend, they make my life easy. F, I step to the E. Wow, smooth voice leading, that's awesome, that's great, no problems. I quickly look and say, well, here's parallel motion. I want to make sure that that's not parallel fifths or octaves, but A to F is a 6, G to E is a 6. And we know that the parallel 6 is a very beautiful sound, so actually very desirable. So we're in good shape. Our 4 chord in root position, so B flat, root position means double the root, D, F. I have a B flat, I have an F. So now I need another B flat and I need a D. Well, this is an E. This E I don't want to move to a B flat. Number one reason why is that's going to be a tritone leap. Tritone leaps are unacceptable as a melodic leap under normal circumstances. So that alone, so I'm going to put the B flat down here. Look, I can step to the B flat. E needs to go to D. I can step. Look at that, super smooth voice leading. All right, let's listen to that example so you can hear that super smooth voice leading. Again, you always want to use your ears to help understand this. So we have our 1 chord, 3, 7, 4. Listen to that again. That's a great sound. And now you know how to use that sound and have it make sense. Let's go to our next example. Here, we have a 4 major 6, 5. All right, we have to determine our Roman numerals. So Roman numerals, what comes before 4? We could have a 6 chord, we're in a major key. Obviously, we could have a 1 chord. I'm going to want to use something other than 1 if possible, just because that's so obvious to have a 1 chord. We don't want to have everything be preceded with a 1 chord. But 6 moves very nicely to 4. So 6 seems like a good choice. 4 moves very nicely to 5. So let's see if we can make that happen. Let's get our key signature. F sharp, C sharp, G sharp, D sharp. In the bass clef, same thing. F sharp, C sharp, G sharp, D sharp. If we have 6 and 5, now let's just see how that works out when we're at our bass line, to see if that makes a good bass line. So 6 would be a C, 4 major 6, 5 would be a C, so that's going to be smooth voice leading. Going to 5, which would be B. That's going to be perfectly acceptable. There's no strange leaps. It's smooth voice leading. This should make our lives pretty easy. So we've determined our Roman numeral. We've now figured out our bass. Our next step is writing the voice with the 7th. This time we want a suspension. So let's see if we can do it. Now sometimes you might have to backtrack and change what chord you have preceding it to use the appropriate setup. So in our 4 chord, in the key of E major, A, C sharp, E, G sharp. The G sharp being our 7th. Well, is there a G sharp in our 6th chord? The answer is yes, so we're fine, we don't have to make any changes. If we had chosen that 1 chord, which was a valid option, the one I said that was a little bit boring, there's no G sharp in a 1 chord. Oh, I'm sorry, there is a G sharp in the 1 chord. So we could still do either way. But imagine if you didn't have you tried to put a chord in front of it that didn't have the G sharp, then you couldn't do this suspension figure that we're asking for. So, step 1, let's figure out what voice we want that to be in. Here our bass is pretty low. Let's make it in the soprano. So we'll have our G sharp is our 7th. It's prepared by common tone, because that's what suspension means, and resolved down by step. So there we have it. That then makes that G sharp the 7th of our 4 major 6/5 chord, and prepared by common tone, resolved down by step, just like a suspension would. So let's continue. We have our 6th chord, which would be C sharp, E, G sharp. We already have the C sharp, we already have the G sharp, we need another C sharp and an E. Let's put the other C sharp here. And let's put the E, actually, I don't think I want to do that. I want to keep the C sharp here, and the tenor, and the E, and the alto. That's how I'll do my initial voicing. The reason I switched that is because I didn't want to have the E all the way down here. It gets a little close to the bass line. You want to usually have a little space between the bass and the tenor so that the bass can really be heard clearly. Having a third between the soprano and the alto sounds great because it's higher in pitch. A third between the bass and the tenor can sometimes sound muddy. The lower you go in pitch, the wider you want those intervals to be to give them a little more space. Just because of the way acoustics works and overtones is the reason for that. So we've done our 6th chord. We said before that our 4 major 6/5 chord should be A, C sharp, E, G sharp. We have the G sharp. We have the C sharp. We need A and E. Well, E can be a common tone right here in the alto voice. And we can jump a third in the tenor to get our root. A leap of a third is very common, no problems. It keeps it very smooth. And then we need to go to our 5 chord, which in the key of E major would be B, B, D sharp, F sharp. We have one B, we have an F sharp, we need a D sharp and another B. Well, this E is not going to move easily to a B. That would be a pretty big leap. So I'm going to make that my D sharp. Whereas this A moves very easily, very nicely, by step, to a B. And there we have it. Let's hear what this sounds like. All right, 6th chord. 4 major 6/5. 5. Let me resolve it so you hear where 1 is. Let's hear it again. I don't know about you, but I love these major 7 chords, all these kind of 7th chords. I think they sound so beautiful, especially when you prepare the 7th either as a suspension or a passing tone. It just flows so smoothly, and it gives the music a really great, unique sound. Our next examples, just so we can just see all the different possible permutations and things you need to cover. Here we're in the key of G minor. I'm going to add my key signature first this time. 2 flats, B flat and E flat. The 1 6/5, that means G, B flat, D, and F. 6/5 means B flat is in the bass. What comes before a 1 chord? Well, usually 5. So 5 would be my first guess. One chord can go anywhere, but the 165 does not function like your traditional one chord that goes anywhere. So in this case, I want to say this F is gonna resolve down to an E, right? So I need to have a chord that has an E in it. In this case, E flat, because of our key signature. So let's how about assume like 4, and let's see if that works. So I come up with a Roman numeral. It's not finalized yet because I have to do my bass and see how that would look as a bass. So if I have 5, that means I go to D. 165 would be a B flat. And then I want to go to C for my 4 chord. Well, that seems possible. 5, 165 to a 4 chord. Now the question here, so I found a problem already. How I'm going to get into that 7th, right? That 7th is an F. And I need to do it as a passing tone, right? Well, if I have a 5 chord, what type of F am I going to have? It's going to be an F sharp. So I'd have to go from F sharp to F. That would be chromatic. That's going to be a little awkward. What I would love is, again, let me put the F, let's say, in this case, let's put the F, yeah, I'll put the F in the alto again, not again, but F right here, which means I ideally would want something that looked like G, F, E flat, because I'm asking for passing tone. So let me rethink this. What could I do instead for my 1 chord, a chord that has a G in it? Well, I could just go from a regular 1 chord to a 7th chord. So I could use 1 because that has a G in it. 4 has a G in it, and our subtonic 7, I'm sorry, not our subtonic 7. So either a 1 chord, a 6 chord, or a 4 chord. Those would be our 3 most obvious triadic choices. So with that, if I'm shooting to go to a 4 chord, what kind of bass line would I like? 6 is usually in root position, so I could go 6, 165, 4. That seems totally possible. I could go G, jump down. That happens fairly frequently. I don't think I want to go 4, 2, 6, 5, 4. That doesn't seem like it's going anywhere. Let's start and try probably what's the most common, which would be to go from a 1 chord to a 165. That is actually something that's quite common, where you take the 1 chord and you turn it into a 7th chord that then propels it to want to go to something else. So if I do that, use that progression. So I now have I modified my Roman numeral based on what I want to do for my bass. I wrote in the voice with the 7th. I now need to spell the rest of the chords. For my 1 chord, I just need G, B flat, D, 2 Gs to be exact. So I have the 2 Gs. I now need B flat and I need D. I'll put the B flat here in the tenor because the bass is really high. I'll put the D up here in the soprano. Then when I go to the 265, I shouldn't have to move too much. The D I can keep as a common tone. The B flat becomes the G becomes the B flat. And then for my 4 chord, I need C, E flat, 2 C's, E flat, and G. I have a C, I have an E flat. I need to keep the common tone G and move this to C, and I can complete that chord. Let's take a listen, see what this one sounds like. one chord. 1, 6, 5. 4. One more time. That works just fine. Our last example, B minor. 2 sharps in that key signature, F sharp, C sharp, F sharp, C sharp, sharp 6, half diminished 7. This comes from a very specific progression. There's not actually a lot of choices. We talked about this previously. It's used when you kind of go up the scale to tonic. So it starts on 5, moves to sharp 6, half diminished 7, to 7 diminished, which would be F sharp, G sharp. Notice I have to add a sharp because it's not in the key signature. That's why there's a sharp here in the Roman numeral. A sharp. So here's a great question. Dr. B, how come you have to write the sharp in front of the 6 because you're adding an accidental to the key signature, but you don't for the 7 diminished? Wouldn't it make more sense to always label it sharp 7 diminished to be consistent with what you're doing here for the 6? And I would have to scratch my head and say, gee, I'm not exactly sure why it developed that way. I would imagine it's because 7 diminished is so common in a minor key that composers and music printers didn't want to have to always put this sharp in front of the 7 diminished. So they said, hey, when you see this, you know that it's the raised leading tone. Just make that assumption. Whereas the sharp 6, half diminished 7 is very uncommon. But that would be a perfectly valid question, and my guess is that is the answer. Let's decide which voice we want to put the 7th in. In this case, they're asking it to be treated like a suspension. So prepared by common tone, resolved down by step. Let's try putting it in the tenor. It's the only voice we haven't done that with yet. Put the 7th, so let's F sharp, that's in the key signature, so I don't need to put the sharp. This is prepared by common tone. There is an F sharp in our 5 chord. We do want it to resolve down by step. In this case, it's a delayed resolution because when you get to 7 diminished, there is no E to go to. So you actually keep it. And you know when you go to the next chord, you're going to try to step down, or actually usually what happens is you do some kind of passing tone to step down to it. Let me make sure yeah, that's correct. All right, so delayed resolution. We don't get it yet in this example. Let me make sure. So our sharp 6, half diminished 7 would be G sharp, B, D, F sharp. Our 7 diminished would be A sharp, C sharp, E. We'll see what we can double. Hopefully the C sharp. That would be my first choice, trying to double. Chord before is our 5 chord, which would be F sharp, A sharp, C sharp. We would want to double the F sharp. So those are the pitches I'm going for. In this case, I have both F sharps already, in which case I just need A sharp and C sharp. I'll put the A sharp here in the alto and the C sharp in the soprano. I'm going to try to move things down. I've got the G sharp, I've got the F sharp, I need D, and I need B. In this case, I can move them. Usually I like to go in contrary motion. This is going to be a bit of a challenge in this example. I could go up to the D because it's unequal fifths. So F sharp to C sharp is a perfect fifth, but then G sharp to D is a diminished fifth, so unequal fifths in that case. So I'll do that just because it's going to be the smoother voice leading. And then here we have the A sharp, we have the F sharp. I'd like to have two C sharps. So I would do something like that. And then if we were actually going to resolve it, let's do that because it's going to sound a little funny. I would probably resolve this up to the D in the soprano, this down to the B. Probably keep that there as the fifth. So this is interesting, and I'm going to do a little research on that. That F sharp, that seventh, has not resolved down. And I guess the only way we could make that happen, because it's asking us to do it as a suspension. So going back, I mean this makes sense what I did here, but it doesn't quite fulfill our directions. We really want it to go to an E. So if I were to do that, let's say I were to go to an E. Oh, okay. I was silly here. I did not spell my 7 chord correctly, is the problem. So our 7 chord, A sharp, C sharp, E, has no F sharp in it, so there's no common tone to maintain. So this steps down to a B, rather a D, I'm sorry. So this would step down, and in this case here, we would try to, we might have an exception doubling where we double the third. So that should have stepped down to the E, just like that. So as you can see, there's a lot of things to be thinking about, and sometimes even I lose track of some of that. So we step down to the E, that's our root position triad, root position 7 diminished. We then move here. Another option, this would probably be my first choice. When we've talked about 7 diminished chords, we've talked about, especially when they're half diminished, but even in the root position, sometimes you want those tritones to resolve regularly, which means sometimes you have the double third in the 1 chord. So let's hear this one. We're in the key of B minor. We start on our 5 chord. You can do something like that. Now I would actually play with this a little bit more if this was a piece. As a melody, this is not very satisfying. What I might do is change the whole voicings, moving it down such that I can have a little bit of wiggle room here and not have to double this and then spread in opposite directions. Because what I really would like is my melody to go C, D, C, B in cadence, more like a more authentic cadence. But to do that, I would need to change where the voices fall. I might take what I put in the tenor, F sharp, E, D, put it there. And then take the alto and put it in the tenor, A sharp, B, C sharp, and then at that point I would triple the root and have a third for my 1 chord. Let me see if that's more satisfying to my ear. together. And all together. Yeah, I think that's what I would do. The other example is okay, but I did have to have the unusual doubling of the third, and it didn't allow for the melody to function as nicely. It didn't allow for that perfect authentic cadence. So there's a lot of things to keep track of. We're getting pretty sophisticated here, folks, but we've gone through a whole bunch of great examples of how to write these seventh chords, these uncommonly used diatonic seventh chords, and you can hear how great they sound and how there's certain pieces of music that would really benefit from their use. So I hope you enjoyed that.